Hey everybody, welcome to Manuscript Massacre. I'm MC, your Master of Ceremonies. Today we're going to be looking at another Chapter 1. The story is called Cynthia's Scene. I don't know what it's about yet. I go in cold, so we'll have to check it out. And as usual, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And don't judge your authors on their first drafts. Always remember, it's a learning process, and first drafts are the junk version. So let's take a look at today and get started.
Chapter 1.
Where it starts. Kadin helped Alya push the tables against the walls and stack the benches on top. Why sell it? His questions never ended when class did.
Why sell it? All right, so we're starting off again with that unknown, mysterious it. What is it? What are you selling? If you're going to describe a object that you don't want, you're trying to build intrigue, it doesn't work with it. I would rather you just say, why are you trying to sell the blank? That's it. Be specific. It's okay.
They needed Galactic Republic credits to fix the pump for the well. It started with the schoolmaster. He was old and near retirement, so why not just fire him, she said bitterly. A strand of her long black hair fell across her shoulder. She paused in her work to redo her bun.
Oh, we got that, her hair fell down her shoulder. Who is the POV in this scene? Kadin's a he. His question. So why sell it? So this is Alya answering. They needed the Galactic Republic credits. Okay. And then a strand of her hair. So the strand of her hair is not about the narrator noticing that she has long, luxurious black hair falling gently across her shoulder. It's about Kadin noticing these details about someone he is interested in. Because if it's not a romantic interest, that's a little weird for him to notice. But you started off this chapter with Kadin, so I'm going to assume it's Kadin's point of view. Even if the name of the thing is Cynthia's Scene. This is Kadin's scene right here. Okay? So Kadin noticed a strand of long black hair fell down across her shoulder. Okay, or maybe, a piece of hair came loose. Makes more sense. And Alya flicked it back. Okay, or paused to redo her bun. But give us that stage direction. I was a little confused up front.
No schoolmaster meant they didn't have to keep the space and could sell the small school building, so more GRCs for the pump. We had to choose water or knowledge. Knowledge lost and the pump won? He asked.
So you had the Galactic Republic credits spelled out in dialogue, and then you refer to it as GRCs in narration afterwards. How do the people would they normally say it out loud, the Galactic Republic credits, or would they say we don't have the credits, or we don't have the GRCs? Okay. And then in the narration, you can expose just a little bit, they needed so many Galactic Republic credits to do X for the pump.
Alya nodded. How did we get it back? The students' parents and I arranged this. My fees are much less than the schoolmaster's. Her fees were minuscule, even though she had spent an additional 4 years.
I got lost there because you have the dialogue of Alya speaking, and then you have her fees right after it. So who's the subject of this paragraph? The dialogue tags are a little weird because you have knowledge lost and the pump won, he asked. Alya nodded. How did we get it back? And that's on a separate paragraph. Yeah, I'm trying to think about how you would rework these dialogue tags, but I think maybe shifting them to a different paragraph might clear things up, where they needed the Galactic Republic's credits to fix the pump for the well on page 1 here. Right after that first sentence, I want to see Alya said, and then continue on with the dialogue, or the GRCs to fix the pump. Alya said. That will make it much clearer that we have Kadin first, then then Alya, and then when you come back to knowledge lost in the pump 1, you don't need the dialogue tag. Alya nodded. So how do we get it back? Kadin asked. See, by shifting things over just a little bit, it helps visualize who's speaking where. This is just, I think, my personal opinion here versus a specific critique. But I think doing that, for me at least, would make it a lot easier to follow. And then when you have this split here in this paragraph, the students' parents and I arranged this. Okay. After that dialogue, new paragraph with it. Give it a dialogue tag again. Or at least, well, you may not need the dialogue tag, but new paragraph. Finish that. And then on that next line of dialogue, Alya finished or Alya continued. And we have here in the courtyard, and we have class here in the courtyard, Alya continued, which is free. So I'm doing a lot of line edits here. Apologies. But small details like that really help. Especially, this is the first 2 pages of the opening of the book. So you really want to have your readers eased into the story in a way that causes no confusion, no back and forth, and, gently brings people in. All right, let's keep going.
After her public education training to be a teacher. And we have class here in the courtyard, which is free. Courtyard was a generous name for the small, cobbled space surrounded by the 4 tall buildings.
That's a good description right there. I like that.
Drying laundry hung from clotheslines strung above their heads between the buildings, and the sun beat on tan-plastered walls. She and her students' parents had cleaned out the trash from this space and brought in benches and tables and hung a large piece of slate from one of the walls. A small crate on one of the tables held smaller pieces of slate that the children used. Pieces of canvas were hung.
Used for what?
Hung to provide protection from the sun. Rain was generally not a problem in the desert. Why the...
Okay. So you have a good-sized paragraph chunk description of the school, and I think it does a good job of selling that this is a broken-down school that had a lot of litter and things that the community took time to clean up and make into a usable courtyard. That imagery is clear. That's good. And it's not too long, I don't think. And it's relevant to where they are right now.
So, it's not like our Hei would stop needing education. Without education, we can't fix the pump. We need both, but the Zoiet Jaffa townsfolk can't afford everything we need. Kadin's mood changed suddenly, and he said very seriously,
His mood changed suddenly, and he said very seriously. In this case, I want to say put the dialogue first, and then describe the tone. Or you could say his facial expression changed, and then he spoke. His face grew somber, or grew serious, and he stared at her. Okay, those kind of details sell that a lot better than just telling us the emotion that his mood changed suddenly and that he spoke seriously.
When I'm old enough and he took her hand, I will marry you.
No and there. That's the problem. When I'm old enough, comma, close quote, he took her hand, comma, open quote, I will marry you. There you go.
What? Where was this coming from?
Where was this? You just switched POVs. The narrator was in Kadin's point of view. He was the one noticing her hair. He was the one who started the story. We're supposed to be in Kadin's point of view. We're not supposed to know about Alya's thoughts. Where was this coming from?
Kadin, she said, gently extracting her hand. I can't marry my student. I know I'm too young now. That's why I said, when I'm older, ... No matter how old you are.
Older, ... You catch that? There's I noticed that mathematicians and engineers don't like the fact that they put the period on the inside of the quote when the quote is not the entire sentence. So sometimes they'll put the period in between or after. It's like, let's say you have a single word in quotes, and it's like, she said in quotes. You know, it's like, quote, S-A-I-D. And then we would put period, close quote. They might put close quote, period, because the quote was only for the word, not the sentence. But that's not grammatically correct in the English language. No matter how much your OCD is triggering, you have to put the period all the way inside. So when I'm older, period, single quote, double quote.
No matter how old you are, we'll still have 10 years separating us. But together we can make Grex for both knowledge and pumps. She shook her head. It's not that simple. He was right about one thing.
Knowledge and pumps, knowledge and pumps. You're kind of repeating that theme there. What is this knowledge that you're talking about? Are you talking about just a general education, or is there something specific? Because the way it's being harped on, I almost feel like you're trying to say that this is a specific piece of knowledge that you need. Is it the knowledge to operate the pumps? Be specific.
He was probably the only one that was her intellectual equal.
And we're in her POV still. All right. Now, I see these gaps here. I'm not sure if that's formatting issue or if that's supposed to be like its own little individual scene. It doesn't look like it. Looks like it's just a formatting thing.
It is. You can be a wife and a teacher. If you don't want me, then why haven't you chosen someone else? How did she explain that no one suited her? And after a lifetime in a small town like this, she knew no one ever would. Kadin, a woman chooses what she chooses. She doesn't have to explain it. Unless she chooses, he said with a grin. She playfully slapped him on the shoulder. Go home. One more. You've already had 2 more. Your mother is waiting.
2 more what? Slaps? I'm confused. Or do you've already had 2 more? If you mean the slaps, say, one more, and say I've already slapped you twice. That way, I at least know you're referring to the one more being a slap. Otherwise, I don't know what that's referring to.
Waiting. Oh gosh, and with that he ran between the buildings and around the corner and out of sight. That child, her mother said from behind her. She was leaning on the door jamb and drying her hands with a towel.
How old is her mother if she's the teacher?
He can be a handful, Alya said. Her mother shook her head. Honey, what I meant was, he's a lot like you. Me? Of course. Always with the questions.
So the age thing is a little weird there, where they're saying that it's inappropriate because it's teacher-student. How old is she and how old is he? Whose perspective are we in? It sounds like the rest of the scene needs to be in Alya's POV. So I highly recommend the beginning of the story start in Alya's POV. Okay. I want to see her thoughts, her perspectives from the start, which means the hair falling thing, Alya sighed as her hair fell once again, and she had to flick it back and retie the bun. That's okay. But her long, luxurious hair draped over her shoulder, that's not something she'd see in herself. So start over with that, put it in her POV from the start, and that'll be a lot better. And you could even say, he's 14, I'm 19, or he's 17, I'm 22, whatever it is, or however far apart the gap is. I don't think you're going for, the hot for, mama teacher over here that's like, 15, 20 years ahead. I don't think that's the relationship you were going for. It sounds like they're pretty close in age. So if you give us those details, it's a lot easier for us to get into the story and get into those characters' headspaces.
You once asked if dogs have belly buttons. I know the answer to that now. Yes, and I don't know how we could have educated you without that scholarship.
So the scholarship. Just reading ahead, it just says
Her mother said and went back inside.
From there, I think you made an interesting joke. I don't know how we could have educated you without that scholarship. She, smirked or grinned, because you're relating that to the dog belly button thing, as if her scholarship was necessary for her to know that information. And that's a funny joke. So I want to see you show the mother smiling at her own joke. And that should be the end of a paragraph right there where it's inside. This next sentence should be a new paragraph.
She still said even though Alya's father had been dead for 9 years. It was good that Alya's mother had kept her families and when she married. If she hadn't, they would be just as destitute as the others that had lost family in that cave-in.
In that cave-in. That cave-in refers to something specific, and you're in narration mode. What cave-in? Be specific. The cave-in, lost family in that cave-in from last year. That's specific enough. But that cave-in sounds like they've never had a cave-in before, and they've never had one since, and it's just the cave-in that everyone, no, last year, or 6 months ago, or 3 months ago, whatever it was. Just that cave-in. Be specific.
Mama, Alya called as she swept the courtyard. She answered from inside.
I think that should be a question mark. That's why the audio read it that way. Would be a question mark.
How is your studying with Uncle Afak going? Slow. It's hard to study the laws and be an innkeeper. He keeps encouraging me to be a Kadi. I'm glad. I am thrilled that everyone will know how wise you are. You have a good start as a scholar. I see you as a mufti. Your father started like you and became a very wise man at young age.
At young age, huh? At a young age. Mm-hmm.
The youngest mufti our town has ever had. I know the story. Alya smiled and kept sweeping the courtyard. Her mother had grand plans for her. If it was God's will, she'd become a mufti. Alya felt like she was always sweeping. The desert dust sifted through everything. The buildings all had dust shutters on the windows, which were important during sandstorms. They kept the sand from sweeping in and swallowing up their village and making it another part of the desert. However, the dust, so fine it felt like silk, was always present no matter how much you swept. It collected in corners and on your skin. It was in clothes and under your feet. It was inescapable.
All right, lots of fuzzy wuzzies. Fix your fuzzy wuzzies. The descriptions aren't bad. I want to say that it's relevant because she's in the middle of sweeping the courtyard. However, it does pull a little bit away from the scholar part that you were just focusing on, and whatever becoming a mufti would mean. And you're giving us a lot of terms with no explanations right now, which is okay. I don't necessarily want you pausing the story every time to have to explain a term, but I want to be able to roll with it easily enough. So after while she's sweeping, she should be thinking about being a scholar, becoming a mufti, and what it means, and that thought process should define that term for us. And let me go back a second. There was another term. You had a Qadi. So you have a Qadi versus a mufti. So I want what that difference is. Why one person wants them to be a Qadi? Why one person wants them to be a mufti? Okay. I don't know if these are specific things from any actual Earth culture, or if this is a space thing. Either way, most people probably don't know what it is. So you want to bleed that information in.
One of the small sentinels floated down between the buildings and started scanning the cobblestones with its blue light. It was about the size of 2 heads of cabbage. It hummed along next to Alya, sun glinting off its green metal carapace.
It was. Did you guess that? It was. 2 worst words you could possibly put together. At least this time we know what the it is. The it is clearly one of the small sentinels. But you introduce these sentinels. Yeah, you haven't introduced these sentinels yet. So when you say one of the small sentinels, what are you referring to? A small sentinel floated down. That makes more sense. But if it's one of the, I want a sentence before it saying what the other sentinels are. You know, maybe she gazed up at the sky and saw a bunch of small sentinels floating around. And one of them came down beside her. But either just a small sentinel, or, you know, she stared up at the small sentinels and one of them floated down. Pick one. And get rid of your it wases and your fuzzy wuzzies.
Bobbing along like this was always where it was meant to be. It bumped into her broom, unaware of her presence. She swept it out of the way. It turned its single glassy eye on her and scanned her. It hovered, showing
It. Vary your sentences. Try not to begin every sentence with the same pronoun, whether it's, you know, he did this, he did this, he did this, she did this, she did this, she did this, they did this, they did this, they did this, or it did this, it did this, it did this. Vary your sentences, change the starting. Try not to have that specific thing or person be the subject of every sentence. So in this case, this is a very big paragraph, so we'll back up a little bit here. Okay. When you said, one of the small sentinels floated down, blah, 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 about the size of 2 heads of cabbage, comma, and you got rid of one. It hummed along next to Alya, with sunlight glinting off its green metal carapace, comma, and bobbing along like this was another fuzzy wuzzy, and bobbing along with no care in the world. Just change the sentence. Okay. What's another word for sentinel? Is it a robot? Is it a some kind of creature? Is it an animal? Pick another word to represent it, and you could say, whatever that is, bumped into her broom, unaware of her presence. She swept it out of the way, and then the sentinel turned its single glassy eye on her and scanned her. You could say, then it hovered, showing no mechanism, showing no sign of how it could do so. And Alya had no idea how those robots could do it, or something like that. So I only needed 2 its for that, and you have about 12. So reduce from 12 to 2, please.
no mechanism of how it hovered. It was a mystery to Alya.
Another it was.
Looking straight at it, she could see the round body inside the hexagonal carapace. It was black and, she guessed, made of some fancy polymer. Why are you always scanning? What do you learn?
So, we have a little bit of world building here, but there's a bit of confusion. Because is this thing a regular part of their world that is just a mystery to the locals? Or is this something that's just a mystery to Alya? That's a big difference. And it's clearly something that she's seen enough times, but has no clue what it is or what it's doing. So I need a little bit of expo here, just a little, explaining how the creatures were everywhere. They never bothered us more than running a scan or two from time to time. And yet no one knew where they came from or what their purpose is or how they work. Good enough.
You've already scanned every part of the courtyard dozens of times. Why another time? She looked up at one of the triangular pieces of...
Notice the time, the repetition. You've already scanned every part of the courtyard dozens of times. Why do so again? And then you get rid of the repetition.
Canvas, and saw that it was sagging in the middle because sand from the last windstorm had collected there. She put the broom against the sag, and as she pushed up, stepped back and turned away to keep the dust out of her face. Whack.
Put the whack on a separate paragraph and put it in italics, because that is a sound effect. That is an onomatopoeia. Say that times fast. So that's its own thing, gets its own paragraph. It's special.
Face first into the sentinel.
Face first. That doesn't work. Whack. And delete that next line. So whack on its own paragraph, delete the next line, and then just jump straight into Alya's reaction, holding her face where it hit her.
She yelled and without a thought swung her broom at the sentinel and hit its green carapace with satisfying crack. She put...
With a satisfying. See, this is why it's good to have the audio reader, because it really pops out where those little typos are.
Put her right hand to her nose to stop the bleeding and still held the broom in her left hand. The sentinel clicked, and the color of its glassy blue eye turned red. Oh, she said as it fired a short burst of red light at her left hand. She screamed.
Why is it ... and then comma? Number one, if it's ... don't use the comma. Number two, ... the ellipse is hesitation. You're pausing. Oh. I think it would be more like an exclamation, like, oh, short, like, whoa, what? Unless you're trying to say, like, oh, nuggets, or something like that, throw in a good sci-fi word. Oh, Carablast is, I think, is the Star Wars one. Oh, plumber feathers. Whatever you want to do. Make it up.
She heard her mother's calm voice behind her. Don't move.
Why is her mother's voice calm? Calm seems like an odd reaction if she was screaming. Firm, confident, with no sign of fear, sure, but not calm. Don't move. Her mother's voice was stern but clear, but without a hint of fear in her voice.
She inhaled deeply. She shook from pain and fear, but otherwise...
Telling those emotions again. She shook from pain and fear. You don't need to tell us the emotions. What is she doing with her body? How, what are the thoughts going through her head? Those will show you the emotions without you writing them down.
Eyes did not move as the sentinel scanned her with its angry red eye. Its eye went back to blue and it spun and began scanning the tables. Her mother grabbed her by her good arm and dragged her through the doorway into the kitchen and plunged her left hand into the water jar. She screamed again. I got a good look at it, her mother said. It will hurt a lot, but it should heal just fine. Well, that's good.
You see, here's that problem with those its, okay? You have two different its here. I got a good look at it. Are you referring to the sentinel? Whatever her arm is that she needed to plunge into the water? Whatever her face is bleeding? Because in the next half a sentence, it will hurt. I got a good look at it, her mother said. It will hurt. So the first it referring to the wound? Because the second one is, and then it should heal just fine. Sounds like the wound again. Okay. But what do you mean you got a good look at it if it's the wound? I got a good look at it. See what I mean? You have two different its, I think. I think the first one's sentinel. I got a good look at the sentinel.
News. She wouldn't be one of the many walking wounded created by the sentinels. Maria, their hired helper, appeared in the doorway that led out to the dining area of their inn. What? Oh, grief. Not another run-in with one of those idiot sentinels. How are we supposed to live when every time we turn around, we bump into one of those floating menaces? She took a clean cloth from the shelf and dipped it into the water jug. As she wrung it out, she said, I don't think it broke your nose. She gently cleaned the blood from Alya's face and did her best to clean the front of her blue shirt. I don't know what it is with your generation, wearing all that color and no headscarf.
See, here's where I was confused again. You pronoun issues again, because you have two women. Her. Let me go back to this paragraph here. Her mother grabbed her by her good arm and dragged her through the doorway to the kitchen and plunged her left hand into the water jar. She. Yeah, you can't do that. Okay. Her mother grabbed Alya by, when you say her good arm, I don't know whether you're referring to Alya or her mother. By her, I'm assuming Alya. So that makes it sound like her arm is injured. But it's supposed to be her nose that's injured. And then she plunged her left hand into the water jug. I assume she meant she plunged Alya's left hand. And then she screamed again. So it sounds like it. There's nothing about her arm being injured. Did you mean to say that when the angry eye turned red, it laser zapped her arm? Because you didn't say that. If that's what you meant to say, got to put that in. And look at the top line again. Its angry red eye. Its eye went back to blue, and it spun. 3 its in one line. It is your favorite word, and I think you need to strike that word from your vocabulary, or at least, limit it to once a page, which I understand would be difficult, but it's gonna hurt.
I don't think it broke your nose. She gently cleaned the blood from Alya's face and did her best to clean the front of her blue shirt. I don't know what it is with your generation, wearing all that color and no headscarf. What are you thinking? You're the only one that actually cares. The old grannies and holy men and women don't say anything. They understand times change. It's been over 500 years since our people left Earth. Change is not always good. Once, men and women were segregated. Gender has nothing to do with piety, Alya snapped.
Wait, I'm confused. Change is not always good. Once men and women were segregated. That means her mother's saying that it was better that men and women were segregated, and now that they're not, it's bad. Is that what you were going for? I, I mean, I want some exposition then of thoughts from Alya going, her mother is a complete traditionalist who thinks that, society was better off 500 years ago. And it sounds, I don't want to speculate and I don't want to comment because you haven't actually said whether or not this is referring to Islam. But I don't know if you yourself, the author, are a Muslim. If you are, then it's a little easier to speak to the culture. It sounds like, and then it would sound like you are. I see the word burqa ahead of me and hijab, so yeah, it's definitely Islamic faith. So I'm assuming you know enough about the subject, but it also would, when you're talking about things like that, you're calling attention to some of the more stricter sides of things, of the faith, and it would be very good to get a sensitivity reader, unless you're trying to paint a very specific message. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Everybody's entitled to write about their culture, their faith, and what they know. I only bring it up at all because of the pointing out of this separating men and women, not wearing the headscarf, things like that, which, depending on people's level of faith, can be a very touchy subject. I myself am not Islamic, so I'm not a Muslim, so I cannot speak to that, and I don't want to put words in their mouth either. So just do your homework and get a sensitivity reader, and you should be good.
Not gender. Separation of. Separation and clothing have nothing to do with faith. What if the only thing a person has are rags? Are they more or less pious? That's not what I'm talking about. You're not being logical. Faith is not about logic. I can't believe God is going to look more favorably on a person because of how she dresses. It's for others to know that you are pious. Since when is it others' business? That's between me and God. If you're so pious, why aren't you wearing a burqa instead of a hijab? Why do you serve men? Why aren't you cloistered at home? Stop. Mother yelled.
Yeah, so that's a very difficult discussion. But you know what? For people in that situation where you have the younger generation looking to break out more versus the older generation looking to preserve more, that's a common family thing. And I think that discussion is fine. But again, I can't speak to it. Get somebody else's opinion.
Alya snapped her mouth shut and looked at the ceiling, and Maria huffed out of the kitchen. She and Maria argued at least every other day. Maria was illogical and ignorant, which infuriated Alya. Alya started to take her hand out of the water.
That's a little accusatory. Because she huffed? She didn't speak, she just huffed and walked out of the room. Give us some context as to why Alya thinks that.
Jug, and Mother said, "Keep it in. The evening rush won't start for a while yet. Keep it in until then." Mother brought over the tall kitchen stool, and Alya sat and made herself comfortable. Her mother patted her on her good arm. "We all have our run-ins with those nuisances." For a moment.
Those nuisances? What nuisance? We all have our run-ins with those nuisances. I have no idea what that sentence means and what it's referring to. Not a clue. Sorry.
Moment. Alya thought her mother was talking about Maria, then
So even Alya didn't know what she was talking about.
realized she meant the Sentinels. Consider this a few minutes of rest time, something you don't usually get. Alya nodded. She sat on the stool and dangled her hand in the ceramic water jug that was as high as her waist. She faced the doorway to the courtyard. She could see outside because the door was propped open. The jug stood next to the deep basin that was used to wash pots and pans. Next to it in the corner was a set of shelves with cloths and other things necessary for cleaning a kitchen. next to the cabinet, and opposite the door to the courtyard was the door to the dining area.
Next to. And look how big this paragraph is. Okay, it's so big that it actually continues on to the next page. Just stylistically, break up your paragraphs where you can, so that you have no more than like 5 or 6 sentences per paragraph max. The reason why you want to do that is because when words are grouped together without any kind of separation, visually it becomes a jumble of words that's hard to read. So it slows the reader down. Take your time, pick key spots where the subject changes and make it a new paragraph. So for instance, the first part of it is talking about sitting on a stool and dangling the water jug. Okay. Where it says next to it, that's a new paragraph. And then you have that repetition next to it, or next to the water jug, those its. And then you have next to the cabinet. So to avoid that, you could say, by the cabinet, and then you don't have next to. And then along the wall is a new paragraph again, because you're describing the jug and what's near it by the kitchen, the cabinet. Now it's the wall. The wall's a new subject. Okay, many cabinets holding food, blah, blah, blah. But if you separate it like that, where I see 3 possible paragraphs on this page, it becomes much easier to read.
Yeah. Along that wall was a set of many cabinets holding food and herbs necessary for cooking. The wall opposite from where Alya sat held the ovens and fireplace, along with a stairway up to the living quarters. On a usual day, she'd be stoking the fires now and getting ready for the evening meal. She didn't mind missing out on that chore. She turned her eyes to the large window on the same wall as the doorway to the courtyard. She could see out there, and no sentinel could be seen. What was their purpose? All they ever did was scan and burn. She looked at the green, healthy herbs growing in the window box of the large window. Sometimes they'd punish you if they caught you mining or harvesting wood.
Who would punish you? The sentinels? But all they ever did was scan and burn. And you didn't even show burning, so we didn't know about that yet. You need to give us an example of the sentinel going somewhere else, scanning, and then setting it on fire. What does the burning part mean? Walk us into that. And then, who's they? Is that the sentinels? Is that, the secret government? I don't know what they is. You're referring to it, so many times.
Were they protectors? Her eyes rested on the slate counter that ran along below the window. If anyone touched the spiny ball-shaped plant they called the pincushion, 3 sentinels would appear immediately and fire on the person until death. Unless that person could outrun them.
You just said burn before. So when you say fire on them, do you mean set them on fire, or do you mean shoot them? Because that contradicts scanning and burning. You just need to be consistent with that.
Then they seemed to forget what they were doing and go back to scanning. What kind of protection was that? They were incomprehensible. A rare, gentle breeze glided in through the window and doorway and slid across Alya's...
You see that? What kind of protection was that? They were incomprehensible. And then you switch subjects. Switch subjects, new paragraph. And I just like to point out that from the last page to the page before on the other screen, you have 2.5 pages that is one massive paragraph. Don't do that. It's just a jumble of words that's hard for my eyes to actually read and look at. So here we are. They were incomprehensible. Who? The mysterious they again. I know you're referring to the sentinels, and you don't want to keep saying sentinels over and over, but I want you to come up with at least one other word for them that you can rotate back and forth with. Like I want, the sentinels, they, it, the robots, the machines, whatever. So you can vary your sentences and vary so you don't have this constant repetition and then the confusion of the mysterious they, the mysterious it.
Sweaty neck. She closed her eyes and enjoyed the delicate caress of the wind.
Oh boy.
Ready for the evening meal.
Stop there. It's the delicate caress of the wind. There we go. Delicate caress is one of those Purple Prose phrases again. I won't fault you a little bit for that because she closed her eyes to enjoy it. So a delicate caress is not a bad thing. Just avoid too much purple prose. A little bit here and there sprinkled in is fine. So in this case, I think you're fine here. But yeah, we got through that one pretty painlessly tonight. Much less to harp on from last time. You know, I did a lot of line editing this time, but the storyline itself is intriguing. The storyline I'm seeing so far is that we're sometime in the future, and we're dealing with a family of Islamic faith who is reconciling modern or futuristic culture against traditional values, which could create a lot of tension, which is very cool for stories. Faith and families is one of those spots that, while politically sensitive, is also, you know, red meat and potatoes for good conflict and intrigue. I think that's a really cool background angle to Alya's story. That side plot of her coming into her own from her culture, and how that'll affect her throughout the story. And then you have the mystery of the Sentinels, these things that just showed up one day. They don't know. Now, you didn't tell us whether or not they've been there their whole lives, you know, if it's something that's been there for generations, or if it's something that appeared within the recent past. That kind of information might be useful. But again, that's a good, solid intrigue to bring a person in for a chapter 1. So overall, I'm actually giving this a very high rating for a chapter 1. You know, I harped on a lot, but mostly it was line edits. Mostly it was cleaning things up so it reads nicer. The story is good so far. I'm intrigued. I am interested in hearing more. So take that to heart. Now, first drafts are always rough, as we've said. And I expect when things are cleaned up, this will read a lot nicer. The paragraphs will be separated. You'll get rid of, you know, the 1,000 itses, you know, it wases and everything else. Then just clean up that prose. And this will be a nice read. So I'll end it there. Yeah. So like I said, great job. And I am happy to give criticism, but I'm also happy to give praise. And, you know, sometimes stories work out a little bit more boring when I can't tear them apart as well. But, you know, that's good. I'd rather that. If it's easier for me to read, it's less painful to get through. It may be less entertaining for my readers, but you know how it is. Anyway, that's all there is. As always, like and subscribe. Check out the YouTube channel. And if you want to join us on Discord, check out the website, manuscriptmassacre.com. And if you want to submit your own critiques, you can find information there. Until next time, cheers all.